Hey, what's up guys, Rev here. So after several months, we have another update on the Vice News hit piece launched against the manga industry. The director of the documentary, Hanako Montgomery, announced a few days ago on Twitter that she and her team at Vice News, responsible for the documentary, have been nominated for an Emmy Award. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that nightmarish hit piece filled with slander and misinformation is receiving an Emmy nomination that is celebrating its outstanding work. So if you know the full context of that documentary, you're probably falling out of your chair seeing people actually celebrating it. And I want to introduce this piece either to remind those who already have seen it or to inform people about it that this hit piece against the manga industry is abhorrent. So about a year ago, this was released to YouTube, and it is called Inside the Pedophilic Manga Industry in Japan. Now, unsurprisingly, it is filled with a whole host of misdirection, misinformation, as well as outright slander. It is something that was universally hated by anyone who looked at this situation objectively, and it was a big controversy when it released about a year ago. So today, I thought we would either inform or remind people as to how bad this documentary is and how it should never be considered for an Emmy or praised in any sort of a way. So for those who don't know, what are Emmy Awards? Well, it's an annual event, a big thing. It's on TV. All of the people from the related mediums revolving around television and anything else that looks like it these days with live streaming and YouTube and things like that. And they come together to nominate and award certain pieces of media. Now, the reason this is extra disturbing is because this is not some fan-driven thing. It's not like fans voted for this or random everyday people. No, this is a nominee list produced by their peers, by members of the related industries. That is why this is so disturbing, because members of the media sought out this documentary and not only approved of its message, but are going as far to nominate it for its supposedly outstanding work. And I had to check, it is in fact an actual nominee. Deadline released a list of all of the nominees for the Emmy Awards of 2023, and under the Outstanding Arts, Culture, or Entertainment Coverage nominee list, you can see Vice News tonight's The Dark Side of Manga. So here is the video itself. You may notice many things about it, including the comments being turned off. But this was a big deal when it dropped about a year ago. In fact, pretty much right after it dropped, I released a reaction to the documentary. You can find that video listed in the description. I go more in depth than I will in this video today. And if you want to see scenes from the documentary, you can see it there. But today I want to go over this very generally and all of the things wrong with this documentary. Also some of the fallout and most recent updates that happened after I made my reaction video and the dust settled at that given time. So again, unsurprisingly, this documentary was filled with a whole host of misdirections, misinformation, and slander. It misrepresented Japanese law and also portrayed illustrations featured in the documentary as CP. They use the word CP interchangeably with drawings, with the intended effect of painting these things as something illegal. They also go as far as to spread misinformation, not only about Japanese law, but also about US law as well, at one point in the documentary claiming that lolicon and related materials are illegal, outright illegal in the US, and you could get up to 15 years in prison for owning them. Which, if you've been any level familiar with this channel, you know that's completely false. These materials are not illegal and will not get you 15 years in prison. In fact, the controlling federal statute on this matter uses the term indistinguishable. That is the only time it crosses into something illegal, when the drawings are indistinguishable from a real-life child. Obviously, that doesn't apply to anything featured in the Vice documentary. In fact, the only time that applies is with deep fakes and things using images of real-life children and swapping them onto drawings. Now, there's also another fixture of the documentary that spends a lot of time focusing on this graph right here, showing sex abuse of minors in Japan. They claim that there is a outrageous boom in these statistics over the past couple of years, and of course, they tie that back to manga. And with no evidence, they claim that that is related to this rise in sex abuse of minors, which is absolutely outrageous. Now, I don't feel the need to really go too deep on this one, but also I think it's worth noting when it comes to sex crimes, statistics like this are often very misleading because the number of victims and arrests doesn't necessarily prove that there's more crimes happening. It just proves that more people are reporting it, which might actually be a sign that victims are feeling more comfortable to come forward and report the abuse they have suffered. And also, same thing with the number of arrests. It might just represent law enforcement cracking down harder on this stuff, which again could mean something positive. But moving forward, of course, they show this chart and post it in isolation. They show these statistics for Japan, but they don't compare it to anything else. For example, like Western countries. They don't compare this to rates of sex abuse of minors in Europe or in North America, where those rates are much higher than Japan. So they post it in isolation to make Japan look bad. Now, of course, when it comes to evidence showing off this connection between drawings and real life abuse, they have no actual studies or evidence to support that. Rather, it's all emotional claims from people who have a moral issue with these drawings. In fact, they go to centers for victims of abuse and ask some of the people in charge their opinion on this content, where one of the people claims it is a violation of human rights, that these drawings are a violation of human rights, something that the UN has been trying to claim for many years, a message that a lot of Japanese citizens and lawmakers have openly rejected, by the way. And speaking of other forms of evidence, the star witness for this documentary is this individual right here, who is a convicted pedophile who harmed many children over the course of 2+ decades. They platformed this pedophile and made him the star witness, proving the intended purpose of the documentary to show that consuming manga makes you harm children. Yes, they gave this guy more airtime than Japanese lawmakers in this film. They made him the star witness of their entire story. And just for a little bit of a note, I referenced this in my initial reaction from back a few months ago, but he states explicitly that he was already attracted to children well before he ever consumed his first piece of manga. He already had that attraction, and then later in life started consuming manga. So the cause and effect there just doesn't exist. Besides the fact, I wonder, Vice, do you think this person actually cares about protecting children from drawings? Or do you think this man is looking for a scapegoat to blame his horrible crimes on in the form of these drawings? Yeah, Vice News is quite literally enabling this sort of justification this pedophile is using, not to mention the fact, of course, like I said, they're platforming him in the first place. And this is something they have done before. They have platformed this individual in previous articles written by Hanako, who is, of course, the director of the documentary. And I point this out, this juxtaposition here, between this article where she's giving a platform and is being quite positive towards a pedophile, but is very angry about drawings in this article, where she tried to cancel this video down here for having skimpy clothing, where the midriff of this anime character was showing during a traffic safety video. She got more upset about this anime character from a traffic safety video than she did about this situation where real life kids were abused, and she gave a more open mind to a pedophile than this video. That should tell you a lot. But people have been pointing out a lot of things about the director Hanako and her role in this documentary. So make it be known, she broke the law during this documentary, during the filming of this documentary. She went into many different places, including manga shops, and secretly recorded her experience there, which, without the consent of the shop owners, breaks Japanese law. So she quite literally broke the law while getting these secret recordings. And you notice in the background, all of these images are censored. That is something that she does anytime she was inside these manga shops. And this was something that users discovered on Twitter. So here is a screenshot from her documentary as she enters a manga shop called Melon Books. And here is an uncensored shot users found who were familiar with this shop, and they compared it to the documentary. You can see on here, it looks very damning. You know, they're making it look like it's very sexual, like there's something you're not allowed to see in the background. But this is the reality of what it looks like. And I'll even zoom in. Look at the walls. Everything is completely safe for work. Are you telling me you needed to censor this or this or this? All of these are fully clothed, safe for work anime characters, but she censored it to misdirect you. She did it to paint the image in your head that there's something sexual or really explicit in the background when there wasn't anything to begin with. But moving forward, another final note before we move on to kind of the aftermath of this documentary. They brought in Ogino, who's very popular in the anime scene because he defends this sort of content. But he was interviewed at the end, and of course he was given less time than the actual, the convicted predator that they brought on, but nonetheless, he states as a Japanese lawmaker that they should make laws based on facts and evidence and not emotions. And in this case, there's no evidence that any of this material is harming real children or increasing a propensity to harm children. And of course, he got less screen time, like I said, than the actual predators, but he pointed something out on Twitter after this documentary was released, and you can see it's very dark and grainy in this room. Well, as it turns out, the room was brightly lit when they were interviewed, but in editing, they decided to make it dark and portray him as some sort of like a Yakuza boss and make it very dark, when basically all he came on to say in a brief interview was that drawings aren't real people and that we shouldn't treat them the same and make laws based on emotional outrage over drawings. But nonetheless, there's a lot of things to take away. That's just some of the many mistakes in that documentary, many of which I think are intentional. But there's also something a lot of people got angry about, and that is the censorship of any sort of criticism directed towards this documentary. So you might have already noticed this, I mentioned earlier. The comments were immediately turned off on this video. There was never a chance to actually leave a reply to this video, which of course, you know, no feedback allowed. That's part of the main thing that is important here when you're having an opinion piece about something where you're accusing the entire industry of catering to pedophiles, but you don't allow people to criticize it, and you make opinions on the matter that justify these claims, and you don't allow feedback. That's obviously something very cowardly and unethical from supposed journalists. But I actually think this aspect here is even worse than turning off the comments. This video was region blocked in Japan. Now, that doesn't mean that Japan blocked the video. Vice News went into the settings of the video and made sure that Japanese users could not view this documentary. They did that to shield themselves from criticism from the main subjects of the video. And of course, people were pretty outraged by that because the only way a Japanese user could see this is by, of course, getting a VPN or something similar to that. In fact, a lot of people thought because this is so damning and it's having such a negative message about the manga industry in Japan, they started re-uploading versions of the video, unedited versions, onto Japanese YouTube and Nico Nico, which is like their version of YouTube. And immediately when that started happening, Vice News clamped down and took down those videos with copyright claims. And in fact, some of these videos that were re-uploaded had tens of thousands of views, and people were starting to get more vocal about their criticism of Vice News, in particular Japanese citizens who were not seeing this video in the first place because of that region block. And like I just said, all these re-uploads would be taken down by Vice News, who was avoiding any sort of backlash for their documentary. And another thing, just to put the final nail in the coffin here, everyone found the reach that Vice News was making to accuse people of pedophilia over drawings to be quite rich, because Vice News has a very shady past when it comes to the articles they have posted, including articles defending the Netflix film Cuties and other things like these articles here where they are essentially trying to water down the term pedophilia and offer a bright spot and more sympathy towards pedophiles, which is absolutely disgusting, and it just goes to show the kind of morals that Vice News has. But nonetheless, here we are with an Emmy nomination for this burning pile of trash. Somehow this happened, And honestly, looking at the reaction to this tweet, there's nothing. There's no backlash. I feel like this really just slipped through the cracks. And really, it's going to be the responsibility of users online to point out the unbelievable nature of this nomination. That this should not be treated with any respect, let alone rewarded by peers and members of the media. This is absolutely insane, and this is something that the Emmy Awards should be shamed for. They should not be platforming this. They should not be celebrating this. This is a hit piece against the manga industry in Japan, and is something that has spread misinformation, it's misdirected its viewers, and it's slandered people from the industry, and it's wrong, and it should not be celebrated. And I will do my best to spread the word on this, and feel free to spread this video around to make sure people know that the Emmy Awards are rewarding this kind of behavior. But that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate the listen, guys. Please share all of your thoughts about today's video in the comments section down below. That will not be turned off, don't you worry. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.